And let's dive more into the Michael Cohen testimony. The countdown is on. We're a little more than 24 hours away, like Libby mentioned, from Michael Cohen. The prosecution's key witness will take the stand on Trump's hush money trial. So let's dive in. Here with us is federal defense attorney Ronald Chapman. Ronald, welcome back.
Thank you.
So Michael Cohen, supposed to be the prosecution's key witness. He's not going to be painted as the most credible witness. We know that already. But how much of this case hinges on his testimony?
I would say most of it. We don't have Karen McDougal testifying, which was a bit of a bombshell given some of the issues with Stormy Daniels' testimony. The prosecution decided not to. And the early case for the government, for the prosecution, didn't really shake out the way they wanted it to. So now that puts a lot of pressure on Michael Cohen's credibility. And unfortunately, with respect to credibility, I don't think that there's a single soul who believes that Michael Cohen is actually a credible person. Congress doesn't believe it. The federal prosecutors in his prior case certainly don't believe it. Perhaps maybe the only people that do are the prosecutors in this New York case who are willing to put him on the stand as a star witness. And I think there's going to be some fireworks on Monday during his cross-examination.
Yeah, the team put up a great graphic kind of lining out, what Cohen has been accused of, what he's been arrested for. So there it is. So he's been disbarred. He's been sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. The list goes on and on. Do you think this will impact his credibility, not only to the jurors, but do you think when it comes to the prosecution, this is the right decision to put Cohen on the stand?
Well, it's something that they have to do. And that's the way that this trial has been set up. Cohen has obviously been the target of the defense, and they've been trying to get out in front of his testimony the entire time, and they've been relatively effective at doing it. But winning this case doesn't just require a showing that Michael Cohen is not credible. You almost have to, in the acquittals that I've been able to receive when you cross-examine a star witness, you almost have to show or punish the prosecution for bringing this witness in the first place by showing that clearly a prosecution that is not credible would call somebody like this. Obviously, he's been disbarred. He's had issues with his admissions of guilt in the past. He sort of walked them back. In fact, even in the civil fraud trial, he sort of walked back some of his pleas of guilty and then admitted to lying in federal court on the stand. That's all going to be easy fodder for cross-examination, but the defense needs to go even further into cross Michael Cohen in order to make sure that the jury doesn't believe his testimony at all.
We've seen Cohen in the past. He's a bulldog. There's no doubt that the defense is going to try to bait him. Do you think he'll fall for it?
Well, we saw him in the civil fraud trial, and he tried to keep his statements pretty short and pretty curt. He didn't really get into battling or trying to offer more than the question really asked for. He's sort of following that advice a bit. He's not kind of the way he is when he is on his live stream. So I think he'll be relatively disciplined on the stand. That being said, there is so much material to use against somebody like Michael Cohen with his extrajudicial statements that he's continued to make. And of course, we heard that the judge chastised him from the bench even before he got on the stand, telling him not to continue to make those statements.
If Cohen was your client, what advice would you give him?
Well, I think he's got to listen to the question, and he has to answer only the question, and he has to answer the question truthfully. There's going to be a lot of bad that is going to happen. His credibility will be damaged by the time he gets off the stand. But if he openly admits some of those lies, and he has that moment in front of the jury where he is completely open to all of his faults and his failures, he may be able to develop some credibility with the jury, and it's possible that they may be able to believe some things that he says.
All right, let's look past Cohen's testimony. What type of witnesses do you expect Trump's team to call, if any at all?
Well, I think it's possible that they may not call anybody. I think perhaps they may get in a few custodial witnesses, maybe lay out a few text messages that complete the picture of other messages that were offered, phone records. But I think, honestly, in closing, they really get to go back to some of the testimony in this case and point out to the jury how they were able to show, even during cross-examination, that Donald Trump didn't make the decision to classify this as an attorney expense and wasn't really that involved in the classification of these expenses. I also think that one very interesting moment in this trial is going to be before the defense starts in a motion to dismiss for the prosecution's failure to lay out the crime in their case in chief. We should hear argument on that when the prosecution rests, and I think that will be compelling. Judges often reserve that decision until later in the trial, and so the judge may wait even until the jury comes back to decide whether or not he will dismiss the case for failure to prove all of the elements of the crime.
Ronald Chapman, we always appreciate your insight. You and I will be watching very closely this week. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And dramatic.